Hey Star Trek fans, Dan Gunther here, bringing you my review of the latest episode of Star Trek Discovery, Season 3, Episode 4, Forget Me Not. The first part of this review, as usual, will be spoiler-free, but stick around after the spoiler warning if you don't care about having the episode spoiled for you. So first of all, I have to praise this episode for a lot of the wonderful acting that happens in this. I think newcomer Blue Del Barrio puts in a terrific performance. We also get another new character showing up, and I think he does a wonderful job as well. We also get great performances by members of the main cast. I think Doug Jones as Saru puts in a particularly great performance, as does Mary Wiseman as Tilly, who has some powerful scenes to play in this episode, and she does it very well, acting mostly against Stamets. But there's also kind of a collective scene with a bunch of the characters that I think comes across really well. One of the things that I loved about this episode was the focus on some of the more minor characters that we haven't gotten in the past. Of course, if you know from previous episodes, Detmer's been set up for a kind of ongoing storyline, and that kind of comes to a head in this episode. I think Emily Coots just absolutely nails her performance as Detmer. I think up to this point, she's not had a lot to do other than kind of bridge scenes and the standard "aye, sir" and that sort of thing. And she really steps up to the plate in this episode and puts in a truly commanding performance. It leaves me wondering why this actor wasn't used more over the course of the series, but the fact that we're getting a bit of a focus on her and some of the other characters more now, I'm more than happy about. Really, really happy to see that. I think this time period that Discovery's in has allowed them to do some really interesting things with regards to places that should be familiar but aren't because of the time period we're in. So there's some interesting things that are played with in that respect. So I'm nothing but good things to say about this episode. It feels very Star Trek. There's a great message, I think, both in the A plot and the B plot with regards to connection and openness and confronting your true feelings. I think those are major themes in this episode. So top marks. Absolutely love this one. All right, with that said, here we go into the spoilers. So if you don't mind getting spoiled, please by all means continue to watch. If you haven't seen the episode yet, you may want to turn it off at this point. So the A-plot of the story involves our new character, Adira, played by Blue Del Barrio, visiting the planet Trill. Now, as we know from last episode, she's been implanted with a Trill symbiont, but has trouble accessing the memories of that symbiont. So they've journeyed to Trill to try and sort that out, and at Hugh Culber's insistence, Burnham accompanies her to the surface. I thought this was really interesting. It was great to get a look at Trill, and the fact that it's so alien in this time period, because again, we're 1,000 years past, or nearly 1,000 years past where we've seen it in Star Trek. It was really cool. The recreation of the caves of Makala, I think, was absolutely gorgeous. In Deep Space Nine, they did what they could. They have their usual Planet Hell set or whatever on stage 16 or whatever stage number it was, but now we've got the ability to showcase really interesting effects and set design and stuff. So yeah, I thought that was absolutely gorgeous. It felt very alien, but still very familiar as a place that we've been before. From Adira's time in the symbiont pool, we get some access to her memories and learn about what led her to where she was. And of course, as we know, Admiral Tal, that we talked about in the last episode, was one of the former hosts of the symbiont that Adira carries. But the most recent host was a person by the name of Gray, who was Adira's boyfriend, and there was a tragic accident in which he was injured, and the symbiont had to be passed to Adira in this kind of moment of self-sacrifice. And it was a really touching scene. It's amazing to me that in this episode, we're meeting Gray for the first time and seeing this connection for the first time, but the two actors were able to portray it so convincingly that I absolutely buy into the emotions, and was definitely feeling a little choked up over some of the things that were happening. So kudos to the actors, kudos to the writers, also to the direction of Hanali Culpepper, who does some amazing work in this episode, and specifically some parts that I'll call out a little bit later as well. So yeah, terrific direction, terrific writing, terrific acting. It just kind of all comes together in this episode for sure. I definitely want to call out the acting of Ian Alexander as Gray. I think he does an incredible job as well. I definitely, as I said, I feel this relationship, and the few moments we get of screen time of this character really carry through, and he does an impeccable job bringing this character to life. I also don't want to downplay the representation. The fact that we're seeing on Star Trek Discovery a character who we've been told will refer to themselves as non-binary at some point, and we of course also have a trans character in the character of Gray, the former host of the Tall Symbiont. So yeah, really appreciate that representation. I mean, this is just the latest in the long line of what Star Trek has done since the early days. So that's where we're at. All of humanity being represented in Star Trek, I think, is a good thing, and it's really great to see for sure. Okay, so let's pop over to the B plot, and this was really interesting as well. So we have characters who are obviously undergoing post-traumatic stress disorder, most especially Detmer, but as we see in this episode, Tilly and Stamets also are having it out, and there's some issues there. There's a great scene where Saru has called everybody together for a dinner as kind of a bonding experience, and things don't go very well. It kind of devolves into a bit of a mess. But, up to that point, this is a beautiful scene. I really loved where they're trying to come up with different haikus. And interestingly, it's Georgiou that sets this off. She says something that is in the form of a haiku and someone recognizes it. Now I'm wondering, I kind of want to go back and see previous dialogue from her. Is she doing this all along? But it was clever. I thought that was really fun. The haiku scene is what kind of leads to the falling out, though, when Detmer, who's obviously very disturbed and has gone through some horrific experiences and is not coping well with them, gives us a haiku that is pretty disturbing, talking about Stamets' blood on the floor of sickbay, and it's really dark. And as disturbing as the scene is and as tough as it is to watch, and again, terrific direction by Hanali Culpepper for this scene as well, it serves as the catalyst for what happens with the characters later on. So this scene ultimately is what leads to a beautiful reconciliation between Stamets and Tilly, and between Detmer and Stamets, and also Detmer going to Culber and admitting that she's not okay, she's having problems. So yeah, I really truly appreciated this scene, again, like I said, for the fact that it focuses on characters that we don't get a ton of focus on, especially Detmer. Emily Coots, by the way, I know I already said earlier in the video, but wow, what an incredible acting turn by this actor. She does a terrific job here. One of the things that comes out of all of this, however, is some interesting things going on with the Discovery's computer. Now, if you've watched the Short Treks episode Calypso, you know that the computer eventually evolves into a sort of AI that calls herself Zora. And we kind of see the beginnings of that in this episode as the computer's voice starts to change when Saru is querying the computer about ideas to help bring his crew together. So yeah, we're seeing the beginnings of that storyline. And again, we're 4 episodes into season 3, and we've already had, what at my count, at least 3 callbacks to Calypso. So they're clearly building to something here. And I'm really curious to see how this all works out, how the Discovery ends up in a nebula for 1,000 years and all this stuff. I have a theory that I've outlined before on the Positively Trek podcast, and I don't know. I have speculation, but no real idea of how that's all going to turn out yet. The end of the episode is fun with the computer having screened a Buster Keaton film for the crew in the shuttle bay. We see, the room kind of filling with laughter, which is really great to see. This scene, by the way, that I was talking about with Detmer admitting to Culber that she's not okay and has a problem. I love the blocking on this scene, and I talked a bit about this on the live show, but it's the direction of this episode is really well done, where Detmer and Culber are standing in the doorway of sickbay, and it's like, Detmer's taking her first step into sickbay to get help for this, but she's not quite there yet. She's just taking the first step, admitting that she has a problem. And there's no accidents in filmmaking. Everything is very intentional, and I thought this scene was just beautifully done, where they're just talking on the threshold of entering sickbay. And of course, beautiful acting by Emily Coots, and also, of course, terrific acting by Wilson Cruz as Hugh Culber. He's kind of the glue that's holding this episode together. It's his recommendation to have Burnham go down with Adira, and he's kind of the catalyst for letting Saru know there's an issue with the crew. And he's got this serenity to him, which is really interesting, that I think comes out of his experience being stuck in the mycelial network and having died and all this stuff. So some interesting stuff that's carrying forward with this crew. Absolutely love this episode. If you can't tell already, I've just spent the last however many minutes gushing about it. So definite recommend for this episode. One of my favorites from the season. We're only 4 episodes in, we still have 9 to go, but this season is firing on all cylinders. Love it. The other aspect of the end of the episode, of course, is the revelation that Adira is seeing Gray, and in a way that we've kind of seen in Star Trek before. We have Ezri Dax undergoing a ritual to bring forth Duran to help her with a murder investigation in the Deep Space Nine episode Field of Fire. This is different, though, in that there was no sort of elaborate ceremony to do that. It seems to be just happening naturally. Why is this happening? We don't know. Gray himself says that he doesn't know, and presumably the other Trill hosts that Adira carries the memories of don't know either. So curious to see where that goes. This is, of course, in the long line of Discovery people seeing people who aren't there. We had Stamets in season 1 seeing Culber. I guess he was kind of there. He was in the mycelial network. And in season 2, we had Tilly seeing May Ahern, and now we've got Adira seeing Gray. So, maybe they could have a little support group all get together, I think, and share their experiences. But yeah, loved this episode. But mine is not the only opinion that matters. I want to hear what you think. Let me know in the comments. What did you think of the episode Forget Me Not? I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much to the Patreon supporters for your help in bringing these episodes to you. I truly do appreciate it. Thank you to everyone else for watching and liking, sharing, and subscribing if you felt this video is worth it. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, as always, live long and prosper.